Bonjour tout le monde. Welcome everybody back to the August update for Le Brick, Les Misérables by Victor Hugo. This series I'm reading a chapter a day, spoiler filled. Each month I just update you on what happened within that month's content. This is quite a belated update. I believe it's I don't know the date. I think it's the 21st. But yeah, I have quite a bit to talk to you about. It's between those two bits. So last time I left you with Jean Valjean. I forgot what his name was at the time. It's like Monsieur Fauchevet. Why do I even bother? Like, why do I try? It goes like away to come back at 6 o'clock because I forgot his name now. John Direct, who is really Fernandier.
Like, every time I get it wrong, I've even like watched like videos of people talking about like the Les Mis like show and like who they want to play. Do you know Kate Butch from RuPaul's Drag Race UK? I've been watching a lot of her TikToks. This is a tangent you wasn't expecting for this, but she's talking about how like she would play a good Madame Fernandier. She said it properly, but I every time I forget. Anywho.
He wants to set a trap for him because he knows that he is the real Jean Valjean, and obviously he took Cosette and like, I mean, they were just abusing her, so I mean, can't really say much. Can ya, love? Can ya? Anywho, so we left him, he's gone off, and then Marius is in the next door, and he hears like the John Direct talking, and the guy, the man, says to the wife like, "Oh, didn't you recognize him? Like, I mean, it's clearly, like, I mean, sorry, it's Jean Valjean." And then she's like, "Oh, who's the woman with her?" And he's like, "Are you okay?" Obviously, it's Cosette, the girl you hated and despised and abused, nasty, evil witch. Anyway, she's just like, "Oh my god, her. Let's do this. Let's, you know, get our revenge. Like, let's get the money. Let's do something to him." So anyway, so Marius, he goes out and he sees 2 or 3 or whatever of the bad people of Paris that we heard about before, sort of like getting ready for an attack in a way, and he goes to the police and he says like, "This is what's going to happen," and then the policeman is like, "Okay, like, what you've told me, I believe you. Go, and I'm going to give you a gun, and then shoot, and then we will raid the place when it's about to happen, but make sure they're all like ready to act the bad people against Valjean." And then something happens. One other thing the inspector said: if you should need him before then, you'd better come here or send someone. The name's Javert. So he's back in the plot 8 years after. And I was like, okay. So anyway, so then John Direct does his shopping. He buys like I can't remember, like a hammer or something, not important. And then Marius is set in his place. He's ready in like the little alcove. He tells like the John Direct tells the like wife or the daughter or something to go and like get like chairs and stuff, so they should just let themselves into his room, and other things. So he's like trying to hide in like the back, in like the black of the like chateau and stuff. Anyway, he gets it done. So he's able to you know, proceed over the proceedings. I'm trying to get to what happens, but like they set a fire and everything, all that sort of happens. They get the chairs, then the visitors come. Monsieur Leblanc, who he calls Valjean at the time, Marius, comes, but the child isn't with him, so he's like, oh. But like also at the same time he's like, yay, because they're gonna kill him or, you know, hurt him. Anywho, so they're all just talking about sort of like the plight of the John Direct and sort of like the bad things that happened and his poverty and state of his family and all this. I feel like I'm just sort of glancing over it because there was many like long chapters, and yeah, they're just sort of like talking and talking, and then John Durrett says something about how like he served in the war or something, and he helped to like get out Pontmercy, Marius's dad. And then Marius is like, oh my god, this is Fendenir guy. He's the one that saved my father, and I was told in his will to, you know, help him and do what I can to like make him have an easy life or whatever. Like that's what I promised my dad after, you know, going back to him and understanding who he was and his character, and you know, liking him over his granddad. And he's sort of like in a predicament because he's like, well, I don't know what to do, because these people are gonna either like kill or hurt the father to the woman I love, even though he literally knows nothing about her, or should he save the, you know, the sadistic murderer wannabe that saved his father? And he's like, what am I gonna do? I don't know what to do. But anyway, Fandelier, him, he's told to write a letter to his child, Cosette, and he's also like, I don't know who this is, I've never seen you in my life, like I don't know what you're talking about, like I don't know these people, like what you chatting. But anyway, he writes a letter, and in the letter he's basically asking for the daughter to come at once or sort of like bring something with him. And then afterwards, the names, honestly, because there's so many different names for different people, I'm still calling him Fernandier because that's what he is now, sort of been revealed to us. Is like, when she comes, I've got people ready and they're gonna snatch her and put her in a certain place, and until you give us all this money that he wants, I can't remember how much it is, only then will she be let free. So Marius is like, what, WTF, like what's happening? Like no, like I don't want it to happen. But anyway, so they go off and they come back, and then the people are like, it was a fake address. All just like going on, and all the different, like the bad like people of Paris and like the criminal underbelly and stuff have already been slowly coming into a room, and Fandelier is like, oh, don't worry about them, and they're also like put in black faces, and they're also like curled up and scary and stuff. But long story short, they're told to like get hold of him and sort of like tie him up, and they're gonna like slit his throat and something. So Marius is like, what on earth do I do? Like I don't know what to do. But basically he gets the note that Eponine, the daughter, had wrote when she was in his room, saying stuff about like they're coming or something like that, she writes, and he rooks it in a rock and throws it through the little hole, and they all think that it's come from the window because that's where she and her sister Azila, I believe, are going to be stationed, ready, like on the lookout for, you know, police or whatever. So they're all like, oh, what's happening? Like we're gonna get caught. But they're all getting ready to go out the window. They're like leaving Valjean sort of like tied up, and they just like sort of go out the window, and Fandelier and the other like guys are like, oh well, who's gonna go first? Like, let's draw straws. And then they hear a voice. Perhaps you would like to borrow my hat, said a voice from the doorway. They swung round and saw that it was Javert. He stood there holding out his hat with a smile. So he basically comes in and he sort of is like questioning people like, what's going on here, like blah blah blah, like what's happening, and like I've sort of caught you red-handed. And they sort of like undo the shackles, sort of like the ties around Valjean, and then just like a little bit afterwards, they look around, he's disappeared, and Javet's like, devil take it, said Javet with tight lips. He must have been the best of the lot. When I don't know if that, it must be because he knew Javet was that. Also, we also got like understanding of like Varys was thinking like, why isn't he just shouting? Like, why isn't he, like, what's happening? But at the same time, like, this Gorbo tenement where it's taking place is sort of like out of the way. It's like the last on like the street that's in like a abandoned sort of area of Paris. So he just might just be thinking like, well, nobody here. But at the same time, he's thinking like, well, maybe he's like doesn't want the law to know. Why is that? What have you done, Valjean? And that adds to the confusion in Marius's mind about like what should he do. But anyway, so he disappears, and then we get back, like the final chapter is the boy Gavroche, who hasn't been revealed to us, but he's the sort of unwanted son of the Fendediers, and he comes back and he's like, oh, what's happened? Where's my family gone? And I believe it's the person that like works or like owns the house is like, oh, they've gone. So he just like, oh well, just walks off because he's sort of become sort of like a Paris urchin now. He embodies that spirit. I didn't know that I've read this much more, but okay, and now we go on to the fourth part, the idyll in Rue Plumpette and the epic of the Rue Saint Denis. And the book one is a few pages of history, and in this we basically learn about like 1831 and 1832. The history still confuses me, but I think in the 1700s maybe that's when Battle of Waterloo was and Napoleon was defeated, and then there was the Reformation and the royalty sort of got back in charge. And then I believe in the 1830s, which is quite possibly when this part of the book is set, there was another revolution or like an uprising of some sort, possibly, maybe, I don't know, but I think it's the July Revolution, but I don't know what actually that is. But anyway, so we're just getting a lot about like the Bourbons and like what people thought about them and like how they were trying to like, they wanted like change, but like they wasn't really respecting the change that had already happened during the Republic and the rule of Napoleon, and they sort of just wanted to go straight back to how it was before because they thought they had like the divine right to rule over France. A little bit confusing. And we learn about Louis Philippe. We get a lot of pages of him and how like he was a nice man and everything, but at the same time he wasn't that good of a ruler because I forgot and I didn't really care, and I just knew it wasn't going to come up again, so I sort of just read these pages. I was like, oh, all right, yeah, that was Louis Philippe, you know, nice man, shit ruler. Anywho, so I don't really know what is all this, but it's about sort of like the problems of what the country was going through, the production of wealth, its distribution, and sort of like how they learned from other countries about like to revolutionize and things. And then we just learn more about like facts about history and different things like that, and and then we get learn about like what most of the people were talking about and how they were sort of like wanting to have a revolution in a way, and like all these different sects of society, and how they sort of like spread like secret messages and undercurrents and things like that. But the ABC or Abbasid Society, which Marius wasn't really part of, but his friends Courfeyrac and Enjolras and my pronunciations are so bad, were part of, and we learn about sort of like their activities and like what they're doing to, you know, spur up the revolutionary embers, and how they're like going to different sects of, you know, groups of people and stuff, and then about who they are and stuff. And then we get to book 2, Eponine, and we learn about the field of the lark, and Marius, after like seeing, you know, learning that Valjean was this person, Mr. Laurent, and he took the girl away, and sort of like he hasn't been able to find anything about her, and he's sort of like gone into like a deep sort of like depression state because he's like, where is she? And he doesn't like talk to the police or anything because he doesn't really want to be involved with any of it and all that sort of jazz. And yeah, he's just very down with himself, not really doing much. He's giving also money to Fandier like every other week or something that he's taken from Cothrac while borrowing. He always wanted to be like, I'm never going to borrow because I don't want to be in debt to people, but now like he is. And Fandier is like, who's giving me money? And Cothrac is like, why is he giving money to some unknown person? Like, what's going on here? And yeah, anyway, he's sort of losing hope, but then he's like walking one day and he's like in this field and it's like, and then someone's like, oh, this is the field of the lark, and he remembers like that's the raven, like, oh, the lark was what the Madame Fandier called Cosette, or he doesn't know she's called Cosette, but she was like, oh, I've been reinvigorated, I've been rejuvenated. I'm gonna keep coming here and maybe she'll show up. So yeah, we're just talking. Oh, also we learn about the people that are in the prison and how they've been sort of like trying to like be questioned and like talking to each other about like trying to stir up like plots and things. Brujon does something. He like asks his like girlfriend or something who's outside to send a letter to someone or other, but they're also connected to the Eponine in some way. It's quite confusing, if I'm being completely honest. I did not get it. But anyway, she goes to Pierre Mabeuf. I thought he was like the curé or like someone that worked in the church who used to watch Pontmercy watch over Marius, and that's how Marius learned about his father coming to see him every week at church or watching over him. But anyway, he's like in his garden or something, and he's like not really having the best, you know, time, and he does sort of like read books and things and stuff. But then this woman comes up and is like, oh, I will help you water your flowers because I want to do so. And then she asks him like, where is Marius? And this is Eponine, and he's like, oh, I don't know what's going on, but he's like, I don't really know where he is anymore because he left the Gorbeau tenement and he's been living with Cothrac. But he's like, oh, I've seen him often go to the field of the lark, so you know, try there. So that's what she does, and she goes to find Marius, and she does find him. This is such a long update. Wow, I've still got like I've got like a week left. Anyway, she goes to find him and he's like a little bit shocked, like, oh, okay. But before, she said that if I find you where Cosette is, or who Cosette is, he will give her whatever she wants, sort of thing. So she's like, I know where she is, I shall take you there, let's go. And then just before where I finished talking about now is that we're learning about this house in the Rue Plumet, this secret house that this old judge made. And there's sort of like a house, and there's sort of like another room attached to it, and there's this long corridor that goes between sort of like fields, and that opens up to the like a door that goes onto, I believe, the Rue Plumet, and that's because this judge had like a mistress that he didn't want like people to know about, and that's how like he brought her in and things. But like no one really like knows about this sort of like corridor, and like even the people that like own land either side of it now, because it's been divvied up. This was like in the earlier time. That's what it's called. Anyway, so this house sort of like, after going sort of like in disrepair in some sense, but it is sort of like a nice house and stuff, gets bought up by Jean Valjean, and like also like I like this because he sort of talks to the reader. in the events that have already been related, the reader, moi, no doubt have been even more quick to recognise Jean Valjean than was Flandine. And I was like, yes, I knew straight away when he was Monsieur Leblanc. That's what I knew. That I knew that white-haired old man. Like, I knew who he was. I'm manic, aren't I? Anywho. So he rents out the place, and also we learn that he has sort of like 3 different houses all throughout Paris because he doesn't want people to, you know, suspect that he is who he is. And he's sort of like living there with Cassette. We also learn that he sort of like gives Cassette like the nice house and stuff, and tells the mistress, not mistress, the like housekeeper, Toussaint or Toussaint, that Cosette is the lady of the house, and she like owns things. She's in charge of the finance and everything. Like, she's had like an education in the convent, and he is just sort of like acting as her father, and that is what he is. But yeah, that is where I've got to currently. That was such a long update because obviously a lot happened, but I've been putting this off for so long. But I'm just like, you know what, I needed to get it done, because if I don't get it done now, I might not ever get it done. I also have missed quite a few days in July, but I've got back on track now. Anywho, I shall see you in the next update to round out August, and I shall see you then. Bye. Hello, welcome to the final part of this video. I've cycled back around. I'm wearing the same top. Anywho, so I've just got a few more updates on the brick. So we left you and we were talking about like how she's the mistress of the house and he's just sort of like the father and things, and then like we get like a talk like about like the garden, and he goes a little bit like philosophical, talking about like what is life, and like nothing's really the smallest and things like that. It's a little bit confusing. He's just like, yeah, about like nature and like what is nature in some ways and things. Like, he does that a lot. He sort of just like goes off on one, but you do you. And then more about like the garden, how it sort of like contains them, and like it used to be like, I think more like planned, but now it's just like whatever, I think. Anyway, and it also like it's talking about like Cosette's sort of like education in the convent, and how like she was taught in like history and geography and like maths and stuff, but she wasn't really taught in anything like emotions and like the soul and like how to feel and think, and like when she comes across like ideas of love and like what actually are they, and like is this how like she would feel in some sense, if you know what I mean. But yeah, and it's just like talking about that, and then about how this is before she met Mary, so it's like gone back a bit. That's sort of like what it does, like goes back and forth. It's talking about how like she was sort of like uncouth and sort of like a bit like in that sort of like age between like child and like becoming sort of more an adult, and then like in this period she like becomes more of her like womanhood, and she starts like thinking of herself like in the mirror. She's like, oh, you know what, I'm actually quite pretty.
I look quite pretty.
And this could like possibly be like used to her advantage in a way, because she hasn't like really been like taught, I guess, like this is what happens, because like she didn't really have like a proper mother figure. She's just had like these like mothers and sisters, but not like an actual mother. And like Jean Valjean sort of like did his best, but like some things he can't fully understand about like womanhood in a way. And then it goes like to talking about like when she first saw Marius in the Luxembourg, and how Jean Valjean is like, oh, like this is just like a bit like a boring or whatever, and she's like, yes, but then he's like, oh no, like did I just like alert him to her? He is like scared that like, oh, he's gonna lose Cassette. Like he's like, it's not like not really had anything like for himself and stuff, like he's done all these things for her, so like he can sort of like, I guess, like grow old and just like be like living with her and stuff, and like things like that. But like now some guy just turned up in Luxembourg and is gonna take her away. We get this like scene like with this like chain gang of like they're in like another sort of like park area or something, and they see this like group of sort of like prisoners all like chained up together coming along, and like the way it's like described is like actually like kind of scary, like the way like all just like walking and stuff. So Dante might have seen in them the 7 circles of hell on the move, and it's just like really like scary. And it says like I was like, what are those men? Felons condemned to hard labour, and where are they going? To the galleys. And then also she said, Father, are they still human? Sometimes, the wretched man replied. And I guess it's sort of about like how it infects them. And then she sort of like forgot a little bit, but then like she didn't actually, because afterwards she asked like, what are they? But yeah, and then we went to the next book before finishing. What was this about? We go to talking about the boy Gavroche, who is the youngest son of Fiendiers, John Direct, you know. He's like walking, he's like looking for like apple. I think he wanted to go an apple like in a like this garden, that is the garden of Monsieur Mabeuf. I'm so sorry. We learned about him earlier. He knew Marius, yeah, or like the dad. And then the Mabeuf is talking with his like servant woman, and he's just like, oh, like we have no money, we're indebted in like rent. The greengrocer says like they haven't been paid. Also there's no like firewood, there's no like meat and no bread, like nothing. And he's like, okay, like we'll have some apples because that's like what's growing in the garden, and so and so and so. So he's like, okay, no, I'm not gonna rob him because like he's bad enough. And then afterwards he sees like this sort of like one of the criminals from earlier, I can't remember his name, Montparnasse, sorry, and he's following like an old guy with like white hair walking along like this street or something. Probably John Valjean, I don't know, but he like tries to attack him, like kill him. I don't know if that's because that's like what possibly was like related with like the John Direct, like the Fiendier sort of like situation, like when they was in prison and he was like send a note to someone. I don't know if that's what that was, but anyway, he like the old guy like overpowers him as like, what are you doing? Like what? Like you're only 19. Like you're not like, why aren't you working and stuff? And he's like, what do you want to be, a thief? And then he lays into him, like he says like, look, starts there 1 page, nearly like 2.5 pages of like just a big speech about how like, don't waste your life, don't be a thief, like this is a horrible life, you're gonna hate yourself, like you're gonna like get in prison, you're gonna like be in your lowest low, you might even like be murdered or killed, and like all this like chat, and then afterwards at the end of it he's like, I will give you the money, like my purse money, because I don't want you to like be doing this, like you don't need to do this. And he starts like, oh, babbling, and starts walking away, but then Gavroche comes up behind him and like secretly like steals the money from him. I don't know how he did it, because like he's just boy, but anyway. And then afterwards he throws it over the garden wall to Monsieur Mabeuf's foot, and he's like, oh, it must have fallen from heaven. And yeah, and then just a tiny bit into book 5 before we go on to September content is like 2 chapters. It's just all about like how like Cosette is depressed and sort of like upset because like she lost Marius, and also she's just like going around, you know, like what she's like doing with her days and stuff, and she's like thinking of, and also like also like the coincidence sounded like, okay, a bit too many, but nearby is his barracks, and what's his name, I can't remember, but this soldier Theodore Guillemard, who is the cousin, I think, of Marius or something like that, he's walking by, and like his friends are like, oh, look at that, yeah, she's cute, but he's like, no, I don't really care. A little bit after, John Valjean has sort of like gone on a journey, because that's what he does sometimes, and Cosette is in the garden, and like everyone was away, and I think she said like she heard like footsteps like around the place, and yeah, like that was basically, yeah, she heard like footsteps around, and she went to check, but like no one was there, and yeah, that's where we've finished for August. I don't else to say. This has been a long update. Hope you enjoyed, everybody, and I shall see you in the next update for Les Mis at the end of September. So, salut!